Do not buy this camera if you are a professional. If you're a hobbyist, different story. This is my opinion, yes, my opinion, and if you are a professional, do not buy this camera. Why? Because I've said this before, the poor man pays twice. So hear me out. I run a video production company here in Australia and we use a whole bunch of different cameras, including the Red, the C200, the FX6, and a couple of A7S3s. And I value all of them, they all have their own purpose, but I always seem to be going back to the full frame cameras. Now, why would I do that? Number one is the sensor is bigger. Number two is there's no crop factor to figure out. You're not fluffing around with all your cameras trying to figure out what lens is going to be good with that crop factor, especially at 120 frames on the FX30, it crops in even more, so you don't have to worry about that. And number three is a full frame camera is better under low light. And personally, I just like having a little bit of a heavier camera in my hand, but that's just me. So why do I say that this camera is not good for professionals? Well, generally professionals can afford to charge clients. So therefore they can afford to purchase a better camera for their clients, if you know what I mean. So I charge clients anywhere from $1,000 for a video upwards of $20,000 a video. And my clients expect quality when you're charging that amount. I also want my shooting experience on a professional set to be enjoyable. Like I said before, I don't want to be stuffing around with lenses trying to figure out the crop factor in certain modes. So when you're charging that amount of money, a client expects a professional video and they also expect professional gear. So a lot of you guys will say, well, that's not even a professional camera, it's a mirrorless camera, and I agree. But the smaller mirrorless cameras have become such a tool in professional filmmaking, and Sony is marketing this camera as a professional camera. So that's why we're going down this road. I always like to have a smaller mirrorless camera on me. Sometimes they're just easier to shoot with. You can get into tighter places. They're quicker. They're great on a gimbal. So generally I'll use the FX6 as a main camera and then the Sony A7S3 on a gimbal. I would much prefer to use the Sony A7S3 than the FX30. Sorry. Now also a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, if you own a Red, that's a 35mm sensor, you're full of shit, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, the Red is a completely different kettle of fish, completely different sensor to what is in the Sony FX30. You guys know that, right? We can all agree on that, so let's not go there. But where I think this camera is absolutely awesome is for the hobbyist or for the beginner or for the YouTuber. This camera is absolutely wicked for the price. An APS-C camera is fantastic for beginners because it is a cheaper investment to get into the craft. The lenses are also much cheaper, so you can get in and get experience at a much lower price. It also depends what you're actually shooting and what your goals are with this camera. Like I said, if you're a professional, spend that extra $1,500, go for the A7S3. I am sure within a couple of jobs' time, your clients would have paid for that step up in your camera. But if you're a hobbyist and a beginner and you can't afford to spend that much money, then the FX30 is still an awesome camera. Any Sony camera that's been released in the last 5 years has been absolutely amazing, so you cannot go wrong. So are you going to be making YouTube videos? Well, if that's the case, then yes, this camera is for you. When it comes to video quality and frame rates and all that good stuff, this camera is schmick-o. The only thing letting it down is the APS-C sensor. There is a reason why the FX30 is half the price of the FX3. Think about it. But all that being said, is you might be a professional that specializes in wildlife. So this is going to be a great camera for you. It really depends on what you're shooting. I just see alarm bells when Sony is marketing this towards professionals, when professionals is such a broad term. When you're doing client work and brand work, the crop factor might just be too much. You're going to be spending more money on lenses trying to get it wider and wider and wider, and you're never going to be able to get wide enough. For me, that's just a hassle, but for some people, it might not be. Don't get sucked into the hype. Do your research for the specs. Is this camera a good fit for you? So I do have a couple of other videos on this topic, full frame and APS-C. Go watch those videos and watch the full video. Don't watch the first 30 seconds of hype and then get angry and leave a cranky comment. Go watch the full video. And I love this release from Sony. Any new camera release is good for creators, it's good for the industry, it's great for innovation, and it's so awesome to see Sony just pumping out these cameras. And I'm sure a lot of you guys also prefer full frame. So I want to hear it in the comments. Let me know, what do you prefer, APS-C or full frame? and why. And that's it. Hooroo, see you in the next one.